The moment I stepped into my mother-in-law's pristine, museum-like house, I knew something was off. It wasn't just the cold silence or the way everyone avoided eye contact. It was the smugness radiating from Evelyn, my husband's mother, as she sat at the head of the long dining table. I had always been an outsider to Eric's family. They tolerated me, at best, and at worst, treated me like an unfortunate stain on their otherwise perfect image. I didn't come from money, nor did I have a family name that carried any weight. I was just Sarah, a marketing manager with a decent career, a loving heart, and a husband I thought was on my side. When Eric showed me the email earlier that week, I thought it was a joke. Family meeting this Friday at 7 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Location mom's house. Mandatory? Since when did they hold formal meetings like this? Eric frowned as he read it. Weird. They usually don't include you in stuff like this. Maybe it's about grandma's estate. Just come along, hear them out, and we'll leave if it gets weird. That was Eric's way of handling his family, brushing off their snide comments and controlling behavior. He loved them, but he knew they were difficult. I used to think it was harmless, but after years of passive-aggressive remarks and being excluded from family-only events, it didn't feel so harmless anymore. Still, I went, how bad could it be? As we sat down at the table, I noticed how carefully the seating arrangement was planned. Evelyn at the head, Rachel, Eric's sister, on her right, and Jason, his younger brother, on her left. Eric and I were placed at the far end, like guests instead of family. Rachel was the first to speak. Sarah, we've been talking as a family, and we've come to a difficult decision, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It's best if you step aside from this marriage. I blinked. Excuse me? Evelyn slid a manila envelope across the table toward me, her expression cool and composed. It's all in here. Proof. Eric's true feelings. We're giving you the chance to leave with dignity. Eric shot up from his chair, knocking it back. What the hell is this? Mom, Rachel, what are you doing? Sit down, Eric, Evelyn said sharply. This isn't about you. It's about protecting the family. You'll understand soon enough. Heart pounding, I opened the envelope. Inside were photos, printed texts, and emails. They painted a damning picture. Eric having an affair with not one, but two women. But here's where they messed up. I knew the photos were fake. One of the women was my coworker, Jane, who had been on maternity leave for months. The other was supposedly a woman named Lila, but I recognized the photos. Lila was an influencer who'd been traveling through Europe for the past year. Her Instagram was practically a travel diary. My head spun. This wasn't a confrontation. It was an ambush. You seriously think I'm going to believe this crap? I hissed, tossing the papers back at Rachel. Evelyn leaned forward, folding her hands like a queen delivering a final decree. Believe what you want, dear. But if you don't leave quietly, we'll take this to court. You'll walk away with nothing. Eric looked horrified. Mom, stop this. Sarah's my wife. I'm not leaving her. Evelyn's smile widened, cold and victorious. You will, darling. Because if you don't, we'll make sure Sarah's reputation is destroyed. The company your father left you? Gone. Jason will take over. We've already spoken to the board. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about power and control. My stomach dropped. I glanced at Eric, whose face was pale with shock. His family wasn't just trying to break us up, they were trying to ruin me. You've made a huge mistake, I said, standing up. My voice was steady, even though my heart was racing. I'll see myself out. But don't think for a second this ends here. Eric followed me out, shouting at his mother while Rachel sipped her wine, smug as ever. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. The car ride home was dead silent. Eric gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white, his jaw clenched in barely contained rage. I stared out the window, the streetlights casting fleeting shadows across my face as I tried to process what had just happened. Are you okay? Eric finally asked, his voice strained. I turned to him, my anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Am I okay? Your family just tried to destroy our marriage with fake evidence. And you're asking if I'm okay? He winced. I didn't think they'd stoop this low. I knew Mom didn't approve of you. But this is insane. No, Eric, I snapped. What's insane is that they had all of this ready. Fake emails, manipulated photos, fabricated conversations. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. They planned this. For weeks, maybe months. Eric's grip tightened further. I'll talk to them. I'll tell them we're done with their toxic games. I let out a bitter laugh. Talk to them? Like you always do? And they'll apologize, say it was a misunderstanding, and invite us for brunch next Sunday? No, Eric. This time, they crossed a line. They didn't just attack our marriage, they tried to ruin my life. If I'd fallen for it, they would have dragged my name through the mud and made sure I walked away with nothing. He sighed, defeated. What do you want to do? I stared out the window again, my mind racing. Fight back, but smartly. They think they're untouchable. It's time to show them they're not. The next morning, I took the day off work and started gathering my own evidence. I wasn't going to confront them blindly. I needed to know why they wanted me gone so badly. First, I called Jane, my coworker, the one they had supposedly used as an affair partner. Fake texts, she exclaimed, her voice sharp with disbelief. Sarah, I've been on maternity leave for 6 months. I barely text my own husband, let alone Eric. Can you send me screenshots of your last real conversation with Eric? I need timestamps. Of course. Anything you need. And if you want, I can even get our company's IT guy to verify that no emails were ever sent from my account. This is nuts. Next, I tracked down Lila, the influencer supposedly entangled with Eric. Her Instagram was a goldmine. Not only was she posting daily from Spain, but she'd also done multiple live streams during the exact dates the emails claimed she was meeting Eric. I saved everything, screenshots, timestamps, video clips. Then I dug deeper. If Evelyn and Rachel had gone to such lengths, there had to be a bigger motive than disapproval. That's when I remembered Evelyn's thread about Eric's company. Eric's father had left the family business to him, not Jason, the golden child Evelyn adored. Eric had always been more laid back about running it, delegating a lot of responsibilities while focusing on his own projects. But Jason was hungry for control. I logged into the company portal using Eric's credentials. He had shared them with me before when I helped him organize reports. And there it was, buried in board meeting notes and internal memos. Evelyn and Jason had been quietly lobbying the board to push Eric out. Their plan was simple. Destroy our marriage, frame Eric as irresponsible and distracted, and claim he was unfit to lead. Once Eric was out of the picture, Jason would slide into the CEO role, and Evelyn would regain control through him. It wasn't just personal, it was about power. Eric, I said that night, spreading out the evidence across our dining table. Look at this. It was never about us. It was about the company. They want you out. His face darkened as he flipped through the documents. They've been planning this behind my back, my own family. Not your family, I corrected. They stopped being family the moment they decided to destroy your life for their gain. Eric nodded, resolve hardening his features. What's the plan? I smiled. We don't just clear our names. We expose them. Publicly. Thoroughly. And we make sure they never get the chance to pull the stunt again. Over the next week, I worked quietly but efficiently. I contacted a lawyer to ensure everything I was collecting was admissible in court, just in case it came to that. I spoke with Eric's most trusted board allies, showing them the evidence of Jason and Evelyn's manipulation. The final piece? I reached out to an old college friend who worked in cybersecurity. Can you trace the origins of those fake emails? I asked. Absolutely, he replied. If they were dumb enough to use personal devices or poorly masked accounts, I'll find them. 2 days later, he called back. Bingo. The fake emails were created from an IP address registered to Evelyn's house. And the photos? Metadata shows they were edited on Jason's laptop. I almost laughed at the irony. They'd gone to such lengths to frame me, but their arrogance made them sloppy. It was time for the next move. The following Friday, exactly 1 week after the infamous family meeting, I sent out invitations of my own. Asterisk family meeting. Attendance mandatory. Location: Eric and Sarah's house. 7 p.m. sharp. Asterisk. Evelyn, Rachel, Jason, and even Mark, the quiet brother-in-law who usually stayed out of drama, all showed up, curious and cocky. They probably thought I was there to beg for forgiveness or quietly agree to a divorce. They had no idea what was coming. As they sat down, I clicked the remote for the TV behind me. On the screen appeared a neatly organized slideshow. Since you all love family meetings so much, I began, voice steady and sharp. I figured we'd host one of our own. Let's talk about your affair with the truth. The first slide showed the metadata from the fake emails. The second displayed the timestamps proving Jane was on maternity leave and Lila was in Europe. Evelyn's smug expression faltered. These are lies. Rachel snapped. I ignored her, flipping to the next slide, board meeting notes showing Evelyn and Jason's plan to oust Eric. Jason stood up, face red. You hacked company documents? That's illegal. I smiled sweetly. No. Eric had full access as CEO. And don't worry, we've already shared everything with the board. They'll be discussing your removal first thing Monday morning. Evelyn's face turned pale. You wouldn't dare. Eric finally spoke, voice cold and firm. You tried to destroy my wife and steal my company. Consider yourselves cut off. From the business, from our lives, from everything. The room fell into stunned silence. I leaned forward, meeting Evelyn's furious gaze. Family meetings, I said, really do bring people together, don't they? With that, I stood and opened the door. Meeting adjourned. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Jason stood frozen, fists clenched by his sides, while Evelyn's face twisted into a mask of disbelief. Rachel, always the quickest to recover, scoffed and crossed her arms. You think you've won? She sneered. This little PowerPoint doesn't mean anything. It's your word against ours. And trust me, our word carries more weight. I smiled, calm and collected. That's where you're wrong, Rachel. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a small stack of neatly organized folders. Each one contained printed copies of the evidence, emails, metadata reports, screenshots, and company memos. These are already with our lawyer, I said, sliding the folders across the table. And copies have been sent to the board of directors, including Mr. Patel and Ms. Hernandez. You know, the ones who actually liked Eric before you tried to manipulate them. Eric stepped forward, arms crossed. You've been outmaneuvered. The board has already scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday. Jason, they're voting to remove you from any future consideration for leadership. And Evelyn. He smiled bitterly. Your little power play just got you blacklisted from the company's affairs altogether. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You can't do this. Eric, we're family. Family? Eric's voice was sharp. Family doesn't try to destroy marriages and careers for personal gain. You made your choice. Now you'll live with it. Rachel's face turned red. You think the board will side with her? Over us? We've been part of this company for decades. I leaned on the table, locking eyes with her. That might have mattered if you hadn't tried to commit fraud. The board cares about stability, not family feuds. And they don't take kindly to someone jeopardizing the company's reputation with fabricated evidence. Oh, and Jason? I pulled out one last piece of paper and slid it toward him. That's a formal cease and desist letter. If you try to spread any of those fake affair rumors about Eric again, we'll take you to court for defamation. You'll lose everything. Jason's face drained of color as he scanned the paper. You can't be serious. I tilted my head. Do I look like I'm joking? Evelyn was the first to break. She stood up, knocking her chair back, and glared at Eric like a woman scorned. I sacrificed everything for this family, she hissed. Your father's company, your future. I held it all together. And you throw it away for her. Eric's expression softened, but only for a moment. No, Mom. You sacrificed us for control. And you lost. Now leave my house. This conversation is over. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but instead, she spun on her heel and stormed out, muttering curses under her breath. Jason followed, silent and shaken, while Rachel lingered just long enough to glare at me one last time. "You'll regret this," she snapped. "Maybe," I replied coolly, "but at least I'll sleep soundly tonight. Can you say the same?" After they left, Eric collapsed onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Did that really just happen?" I sat beside him, exhaustion finally settling into my bones. "It did. And we won. But it's not over. They're not the type to let go easily." He nodded, jaw tightening. "Then we stay prepared. From now on, we treat them like what they've shown themselves to be, enemies, not family." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Agreed." Over the next few weeks, the fallout was swift and brutal. The board voted unanimously to remove Jason from any future leadership track. Evelyn's influence waned almost overnight as her allies distanced themselves to avoid being dragged down with her. The family chat, usually buzzing with gossip and passive-aggressive comments, went dead silent. Rachel tried to stir up sympathy on social media, posting vague statuses about betrayal and family turning on family. But with no real context and plenty of people knowing the truth, her pity party fizzled fast. Evelyn, true to form, tried to play the victim, calling Eric multiple times to guilt-trip him. He didn't answer. Eventually, the calls stopped. One evening, a week after the dust settled, Eric and I sat on the back porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset. "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" he asked quietly. I considered it for a moment. "Evelyn? Never. Rachel? Only if she needs something. Jason maybe, if life humbles him enough." Eric sighed. "It's sad, isn't it? They could have had us as allies, as family. Instead, they chose war." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Their loss. We've got each other. And we've proven we're stronger together than they ever expected." He smiled, kissing the top of my head. "Damn right we are." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The storm had passed, and in its wake, we found peace, not just in our marriage, but in knowing we'd faced the worst and come out victorious. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. The aftermath of the family meeting felt like the calm after a storm, quiet, almost eerily so. But beneath the surface, the damage Evelyn, Jason, and Rachel had inflicted on themselves was becoming clearer by the day. Eric's company moved swiftly. The board not only removed Jason from any leadership path, but also launched an internal review of all financial dealings Jason had overseen. It turned out that his hunger for power had been matched by his greed. There were multiple instances of misallocated funds, nothing overtly illegal, but enough to justify severing ties. He was forced to resign, his dreams of running the company completely crushed. Evelyn, meanwhile, found her social standing slipping. The community events she once dominated became awkward encounters. People whispered about her failed power grab and how she'd tried to destroy her own son's marriage. Invitations dried up, and former friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone who had crossed such unforgivable lines. As for Rachel, she clung to her bitterness like a badge of honor. Her social media rants became more frequent and more desperate, but without context or proof, they only made her look unhinged. Eventually, she went quiet too, seemingly realizing that no one was buying her narrative. One evening, about a month later, Eric and I were enjoying a rare, peaceful dinner when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. "Mom," he muttered, showing me the screen. The text was long and rambling, alternating between blaming me for tearing the family apart and begging Eric to come to his senses and reconcile. "Do you want to respond?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He shook his head. "No. I've said everything I needed to. If she can't accept the truth, that's on her." He deleted the message without replying and set the phone down. Do you think she'll ever stop? I asked. Eric gave a small, sad smile. Maybe. But by then, it'll be too late for her to fix what she broke. Life slowly returned to normal, though normal now felt more peaceful, more secure. Without the constant tension of Eric's family hovering over us, our relationship grew even stronger. One evening, while cleaning out some old boxes in the attic, I stumbled across a dusty photo album labeled Family Memories. Curious, I flipped through the pages. There were old pictures of Eric with his parents and siblings, smiling at birthday parties, posing on vacations, and celebrating milestones. It was strange, almost surreal, to see those happy moments frozen in time, knowing how fractured things had become. Eric walked in and saw me holding the album. He sat down beside me, glancing at the open page showing a family barbecue from years ago. Hard to believe, huh, he murmured. Yeah, I agreed softly. Do you ever miss it? The way things were before. He was quiet for a moment. I missed the idea of it, the family I thought I had. But not the reality. That family was built on control and manipulation. This, he gestured around us, this is real. Honest. I'd choose this every time. I leaned into him, comforted by his certainty. A few weeks later, we heard through the grapevine that Jason had moved out of state, trying to start fresh. Rachel was still hanging around, but her influence had waned considerably. Evelyn, though, remained the same, bitter, angry, and unwilling to accept any blame. She tried once more to get Eric to attend a healing family dinner, but he politely declined, making it clear that reconciliation would only be possible if accountability came first. It never did. One day, while Eric was at work, I received an unexpected visitor. Mark, Eric's quiet brother-in-law. He stood awkwardly at the door, holding a small envelope. Sarah, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry
for not speaking up before. I saw what Evelyn and Jason were doing, but I stayed quiet because, well, it was easier. That was wrong. I studied his face, surprised by the sincerity in his eyes. Thank you, Mark, I said finally. It takes courage to admit that. He nodded, looking relieved. This is for Eric. It's nothing big, just some old family photos I thought he might want. The good ones. From before everything got so messy. I accepted the envelope and smiled. I'll make sure he gets it. As Mark walked away, I realized something important. Not everyone in Eric's family was irredeemable. Some, like Mark, were just caught in the crossfire, unsure of how to navigate the toxic environment Evelyn had created. That night, Eric and I sat on the couch, flipping through the photos Mark had left. There were childhood Christmas mornings, goofy teenage moments, and candid shots of happier times. Do you regret cutting them off? I asked quietly. Eric shook his head.
No.
I regret that it had to come to this. But I don't regret protecting us. If they ever decide to change, to truly change, I'll listen. But until then, I'm done sacrificing our peace for their chaos. I smiled, squeezing his hand. Here's to peace then. To peace, he echoed, leaning in to kiss my forehead. The past was behind us, the drama finally fading into the background. What remained was stronger, healthier, and undeniably ours. And that, more than anything, was the victory we'd fought for.